Hi, my name is Shannon. Welcome back to TopTenz, and today we're talking about 10 overpowered weapons from Abrahamic mythology, written by Ed Hatchett. Continuing our journey into overpowered weapons from mythology, we look now to the Middle East and the three main Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Despite appearances, they have plenty in common, at least mythologically. Adam, Abraham, Moses, and others, most notably God, all feature prominently in their scriptures. Basically, if they were comic books, they'd all share a universe. And like comic books, they all have some pretty crazy weapons. Here are the most overpowered. Number 10, the Sword of Goliath. David's victory over the giant Goliath is the archetypal underdog tale. In it, the young shepherd confronts and kills, against all the odds, the arrogant Philistine champion. Whereas Goliath is a huge, 6 cubits and a span, wears armor, 5,000 shekels of brass, and carries weapons, a sword, a bronze javelin, and a spear topped with 600 shekels of iron, David is dressed as an ordinary shepherd and only has a simple shepherd's sling. But that's all he needs. Before the fight has even begun, he launches a stone between Goliath's eyes, killing him instantly. Then he takes possession of the slain giant's sword and uses it to cut off his head. In the Midrash, the commentary on the Torah, the Sword of Goliath has miraculous powers, though it's not entirely clear what they are. Some think the sword changed its size to suit its wielder, while others think it had super strength. Whatever the case, David carried it into the third giant war to kill the last of the giants. Later, it was wrapped and stored in the temple alongside other holy items. It's unknown today if the sword still exists, but in an interesting crossover with our last list on overpowered mythological weapons, the old Celtic gods, the Tuatha De Danann, are said to have brought Goliath's sword to Ireland, but like Midrin's demotion to a wizard and Lug's to a leprechaun, this is likely another Christian retcon. Number 9. The Jawbone of an Ass. With his God-given super strength, Samson, the last of the judges, was basically the Hebrew Hercules. His best-known feat is certainly on par with the Greek hero's famous 12 labors. In the book of Judges, he is said to have confronted 1,000 Philistines entirely alone and, to begin with, tied up in strong new ropes. And he defeated every last man armed only with the jawbone of a donkey. Although usually interpreted as an allegory for the power of faith or righteousness, or of God working through otherwise inadequate means, the jawbone itself must have been strong to have held up through 1,000 men. We were also told it was decayed to begin with, so it must have been enchanted not to crumble after the first man it struck. Nowhere else in Jewish mythology does one man kill so many on his own. Number 8. Zulfiqar. The most overpowered weapon associated with Islam, though not specifically mentioned in the Quran, is the curved sword Zulfiqar. It was actually a gift from Muhammad to his cousin Ali during the Battle of Uhud against the Meccans. In the Shiite tradition, Zulfiqar was believed to have been brought down to earth by the Archangel Gabriel. Split at the top like a snake's tongue and curved like a scimitar, it was infused with magical powers. Despite not being mentioned directly in scripture, its prominence in Shiism and the popular imagination explains its appearance in Islamic iconography, from flags and banners to medals, coins, and amulets. Unfortunately, we don't know what its magic powers were, except that it was used to cleave through many soldiers on the battlefield. Number 7. The Glittering Sword of Kenaz. Kenaz has only a minor role in the Torah as the younger brother of Caleb, one of Moses' spies. It's in Pseudo-Philo's 1st century book, Biblical Antiquities, that he becomes more important, portrayed as the first judge of Israel after Joshua. He also carried a magical sword, and such was its power that during a twilight confrontation with the Amorites, all who saw it trembled like a leaf. Kenaz had gotten exactly what he prayed for, a sword that shall glitter and send forth sparks, and cause the Amorites to cower and fall to the ground. In the end, against overwhelming odds, he killed 45,000 men. This was an impressive feat by any standard, even taking into account the help he received from 2 angels, one of whom blinded the Amorites and the other of whom strengthened Kenaz. Like some other mythological swords, however, it seemed to have a thirst of its own. After the battle, it refused to let Kenaz put it down until he had shed more blood, whether the enemy's or that of his own men. Number 6. The Sword of Methuselah. Methuselah, the oldest man in the Bible, lived to be 969 years old. According to Jewish tradition, this was in the early days of humanity, somewhere between Adam and Noah. It was a time of demons running rampant, all fathered by Adam and Lilith during Adam's 130-year estrangement from Eve following the murder of their son Abel by their other son Cain. Adam's new children with Lilith were even worse. There were the Shedim, demons, and Lilin, succubi, who plagued the world for several generations. Eventually, God had had enough. To deal with the problem, he gave Methuselah, son of Enoch, a magical sword. Engraved with one of God's sacred names, it was forged to slay malevolent beings, and slay them it did. Methuselah used it to strike down 900,000 at once. Then, Adam and Lilith's firstborn, the demon king Abrahamas, made a deal with Methuselah. He would spare the surviving demons, allowing them to retreat to remote mountains and the depths of the sea, and in return, they would teach humans to restrain them. There are two different tales about what ultimately happened to the sword. One says Methuselah was buried with it, while another says it passed to Noah, then Shem, then Abraham, and then to Isaac, Esau, and Jacob. Given this was technically the Bronze Age, historians imagine Methuselah's sword was probably more of a bronze dagger or a sickle-like khopesh than the long sword you may be imagining. Number 5. The Ark of the Covenant. In the Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, the story of Uzzah has a crystal clear message: look but don't touch. The young man and his brother were driving a cart carrying the ark for David when one of their oxen stumbled, threatening to topple the cargo. Instinctively, Uzzah reached out to steady it and was immediately killed for defying God's law to not touch the ark at any cost. Though not out of character for the Abrahamic God, this punishment is bizarrely severe and seemingly pointless as a spiritual lesson. Hence, some believe the tale may be a magical explanation for something more down to earth. In 1933, engineering professor Frederick Rogers drew parallels between the biblical descriptions of the Ark of the Covenant and simple electrical condensers or capacitors known as Leyden jars. He argued that the Ark, which although was wooden, was lined and overlaid with gold, was basically an oversized Leyden jar. It accumulated static electricity from the earth and the air, as well as heat from sacrifices, possibly reaching deadly levels. According to Rogers, Uzzah wasn't smited by God, he was electrocuted. Other theorists, like Graham Hancock, have suggested the ark was powered by radioactive material, such as a meteorite, or the sorcery of Moses. Whatever the case, it served as a weapon, and one that would kill at a touch. Number 4. The Holy Lance. The Holy Lance, or Spear of Destiny, is mentioned in the Gospel of John, but not so much as a weapon. In fact, it's only used to pierce Jesus' corpse on the cross to check that it's dead before taking it down. As John 19:34 puts it, one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came there out blood and water. It's only in the time since that it's become such an overpowered weapon. Said to confer invincibility and world-enslaving political power, the Holy Lance has long been desired by those of a conquering bent. But it carries a sting in the tail. The legend begins with Charlemagne, the first Holy Roman Emperor who wielded it on 47 victorious military campaigns. Legend has it that he died after letting go of the spear. Another wielder was Henry the Fowler, a Saxon king from whom it passed through a line of successors to the German king Frederick Barbarossa, who in the 12th century became the Holy Roman Emperor. Interestingly, similar to Charlemagne, and despite his reputation for being unstoppable, he died after dropping the lance, apparently by drowning in a creek. Fast forward to 1796, and we find Napoleon storming the city of Nuremberg in pursuit of the Holy Lance, only to learn that the locals had it smuggled to Vienna. There it stayed for more than a century until the young Adolf Hitler set eyes on it. Immediately entranced, he came to see it as the key to his destiny, restoring the Holy Roman Empire as the Third Reich. Shortly after the Nazis annexed Austria in 1938, Hitler had the relic under SS guard on a train bound for Nuremberg. 7 years later, at the end of the war, the lance was stolen again, possibly by Americans, and Hitler was dead within hours. Exciting though this history is, it may have even more holes than this spear put in people. That said, the Holy Lance is unique on this list for still existing today, at least to the extent of other holy relics. In fact, there are at least 4 lances in existence, all claimed to be original. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, scientific analysis on the one owned by Hitler dates it to the 17th century, i.e. long after Jesus' death. The others in Armenia, Krakow, and the Vatican are also contested. Number 3. The Sword of Heaven. There are many strange images in the Book of Revelation. 7-headed monsters, angelic beasts covered in eyes, a whore with a cup full of filthiness. The last book of the Christian Bible is a twisted, apocalyptic vision of the future, courtesy of someone named John. Even Jesus' arrival, his second coming where he's come to rule with a rod of iron, is frightening, portraying him with flaming eyes, a robe soaked in blood, and a tattoo on his thigh reading King of Kings and Lord of Lords. From his mouth emerges a sharp, two-edged sword. This is the Sword of Heaven. He then proceeds to use it against the forces of darkness before casting them into the lake of fire. Crucially, though, he does it without actually striking them with the sword. Instead, the power of the sword is remote. It's usually taken as a symbol of the power of his words, capable of subduing whole nations from a distance. Number 2. The Flaming Sword. The Flaming Sword, with its blade of holy fire, is usually associated with Michael, the Archangel. In the Old Testament of Genesis, however, following Adam and Eve's ejection from Eden, the Flaming Sword blocks the east entrance and the way to the Tree of Life. Here it operates alongside God's personal attendants, the cherubim. Apparently without a wielder, flaming and turning in every direction, it prevents humanity's return to innocence. It was only natural that the flaming sword would later be wielded by Michael. Of all the archangels, he is the most aggressive defender against the forces of evil, and the sword's fiery spiritual composition matches the nature of his foes, calling to mind the spiritual counterparts to humans in Islam, the fire beings or jinn created at the same time as Adam. According to some, the flaming sword can even cut through the fabric of space-time. The most iconic depiction of Michael wielding the sword is at the statue at Mont Saint-Michel in France, where he's standing over a dragon. His no-nonsense wrath may also be why he's the mafia's patron saint. Number 1. The Staff of God. Moses' staff was more than just a stick. Throughout Exodus, it serves as the staff of God, an instrument of miracles and a symbol of Moses' status. According to the Jewish oral tradition, as collected in the Mishnah, the staff is as old as the world itself. It was one of 10 wondrous items created by God the evening before his day off. Some believe it was made out of sapphire, while others say it was made out of wood, specifically from the Tree of Knowledge. In any case, it was first entrusted to Adam, then, after the fall, he passed it to Enoch, who gave it to Noah, who gave it to Shem, who gave it to Abraham, who gave it to Isaac, who gave it to Jacob, who gave it, now in Egypt, to his own son Joseph. From Joseph, it was stolen by the Pharaoh, and from the Pharaoh, it was stolen by the royal advisor Jethro, who planted it in the garden of his house. Henceforth, no one could pull it from the ground, except Moses, who used the staff to part the Red Sea while leading the Jews out of Egypt. He also drew water from a rock. Technically, the staff isn't seen as a weapon. In fact, Ridley Scott faced a backlash for portraying Moses as violent at all in the movie Exodus. However, he did use it to bring about plagues, specifically the 7th and 8th, hail and locusts. It also appears to have been used by Aaron to bring about the earlier plagues of blood, frogs, and vermin. If so, Aaron also transformed it into a snake to devour those snakes conjured by the Pharaoh's court magicians. Furthermore, it's prophesied in the Midrash to play a role in the apocalypse. So there's 10 overpowered weapons from Abrahamic mythology. Thanks for joining me. Be nice in the comments to each other, like, subscribe, and have a great day.